Hi everybody, welcome back. So in this video, I wanted to talk about passing certification exams. So for those of you guys who have been watching the channel for a little while, you will probably be aware that I did a class last week for the U.S. Air Force on the LPI Linux Essentials kind of curriculum, which I put together and I wrote. And yeah, it was a great class. Things went actually better than I had hoped for. Every time you do the first delivery of something, there's always sort of kind of little issues or errors or kind of weirdness. The length of the lecture in a particular class, versus another one, and you never really know exactly how that's going to be until you see it in person. How are the students going to like the labs? And based on the feedback that we got back, it went really, really, really well. The timing of everything went fantastically, and I got incredibly lucky in that when I was putting the class together, I looked at the LPI requirements for the Linux Essentials exam, and I was looking at them, and in my experience, sort of compared to modern Linux distributions, they were a little bit out of date. So I figured, all right, I don't want this just to be a class that's about passing an exam and that's it. So what I'll do is I'll sort of write all the stuff for the exam, and I'll also show the newer ways of doing it. So for example, they ifconfig was listed as one of the tools that people need to be aware of. I figured it also makes a lot of sense to cover the IP utility and sort of how that works and using it to go show routes. And they talk about netstat, so I figured I'll show netstat and SS to show sockets, stuff like that. And was 2 days before the delivery. LPI announced that they had updated their requirements for 2019. And they do this every couple of years or so, that they sort of put out the new version of this. And I looked at the new requirements, and basically everything that I had included anyway to kind of make it a little bit more up to date was now listed as the requirements for the exam. So there's a really good chance that I have the only or like the first version of the class that's been updated, or the curriculum, or the first course for the LPI Linux Essentials that has been updated for 2019 out there in the wild. And yeah, it went really, really well, and that feedback was awesome. So that means that we can now go ahead and take this, tweak the very few small number of things that were issues. We had one lab where I run VirtualBox inside of a VM that's running in the cloud for the lab environment. And there's some kind of quirkiness with the mouse on some of the systems, so I need to get to the bottom of that. But aside from that, and a couple different typos, went phenomenally well, which means I'm going to be able to potentially deliver this through some other training partners as well, which is fantastic. So I'm going to get into some talks about that with some different training companies. And this is, I want to get onto the topic of the video. But one of the things I do want to mention is I'm probably going to make another video, maybe my Wednesday one or this Sunday, where I'm going to do a sort of a special class for you guys if you want to sign up, just because this class is, or this YouTube channel is still really small. And I really appreciate the people who have decided to subscribe and watch the channel. So I think what I'm probably going to do is look for a week that I have off. So I'm going to need to go check my schedule and kind of see what that looks like coming up. I'm going to look for a week that I have off. And what I'll do is I'll offer the class. I won't do it for free, but I'll do it for a very, 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 very reduced rate. Probably like, I don't know, 80% off, 90% off, something like that for you guys. And then we'll, for those of you guys who are interested, it'll be, available through Zoom, and we can work something out with PayPal or something like that you guys can go ahead and pay for it, so they know that you are serious about attending and are interested. But I'll do that for you. And I'm thinking it's probably going to be in the realm of, maybe $300, which I know probably sounds expensive for some folks, but when you think about it, it has 4 days, of my time, not including all the prep and the writing the course and all that kind of stuff. It's usually a lot more than that. Usually when I deliver it for companies and to normal kind of stuff, And for anybody who's watching this later on, this is very likely a one-time deal, right? So don't ping me, in later 2019 or, 2000, 2001 saying like, hey, I saw this video where you said you're going to do the class for $300. That's not the normal. This is specifically, I really appreciate the people who've been watching this channel, and you guys have been awesome and supportive and giving great feedback. And a couple of you guys specifically had sent me emails about like, hi, how can I go take classes with you? So if anybody's interested in the LPI Linux Essentials, just do a quick Google on it. You can look at the exam. It's through the LPI, which is very reputable. This is not a mid or late career certification that you would want to go do. This is more for people getting into this, or people that are coming from like the Windows side of the world and want to switch over to Linux. I think that could work as well. So yeah, so that's a thing. I'll give you more details on that later on. But being that this is a class that I did on a certification, what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk about how can you pass certification exams. Now, there's two kinds of certification exams, generally speaking. And for this one, I'm going to be talking about the first one. So the first one is multiple choice. So generally you go to a test taking center, or, maybe it's a proxied exam at the end of a class, or whatever it is. But it's basically an online class that you take. It'll be running on a program on the machine. Depends on how they do it. But it's just a multiple choice exam, right? So they ask you a question, they give you some options, you answer them. And that's probably the majority of the exams out there. It's not all of them, but it's a significant number of them. And then on the other side, there's lab-based exams, which I think are actually better. So like if you look at the SUSE exams or the Red Hat exams, they're based around you log into a testing environment. They are done a couple different ways, but there's some observer either online through a webcam or in person, and you are given a list of tasks to complete, and then you have to go through and complete those tasks. At the end of the exam, they basically take a snapshot of your lab environment, and then they go through either manually or through some kind of automated script to test to see if those things were accomplished. Personally, I think the latter way is a much better way to do it. But a lot of exams to this day are still multiple choice just because it's so easy to grade. And if you ask enough questions, you can, fairly reasonably gauge how much somebody knows about something. Now, knowing something and applying it are a little bit different, but that's neither here nor there. So I wanted to talk about how to go ahead and potentially pass the certification exams. So the first thing that I want to go do is point out something that I've talked about before, which is the Pomodoro Method. So the Pomodoro Method is really good for concentrating on specific tasks and not letting yourself get off task. So basically what it is you have a timer. Timer by convention is usually 25 minutes. And then basically what it does is it goes for 25 minutes. At the end of 25 minutes, you then get a short break, which is 5 minutes. And at the end of your short break, or you go back and you do another 25-minute session. You repeat that 4 times. In the 4th time, you then get a long break, which by convention is 10 minutes. So, it adds up. And the idea is that instead of you sort of like flipping back and forth between tasks, you stay on one specific task for a long period of time, or at least a relatively long period of time, but not so long that you're not going to be able to concentrate, right? So it's only a 25-minute chunk. That's usually pretty doable. What I find is when people study for things, a lot of people, especially folks who tend to be more in the attention deficit kind of end of the spectrum, have a very difficult time studying, right? And one of the things about, the multiple choice exams is usually it's comprised of a lot of memorization, right? So you're looking at having to go memorize a lot of stuff. So when it comes to things like that, you kind of need to study, right? And what you don't want to do is you don't want to cram. Because when you cram for stuff, it's putting it into short-term memory. And, it really just depends on how long it is before the exam on whether you require that. So you want to get that into your long-term memory so you can actually go retain this stuff when you're taking the test. So it's much better to kind of do some small intervals, small batches when you go ahead and study for things. So the Pomodoro Method by default is 25 minutes, 5 minutes, 25 minutes, 5 minutes, 25 minutes, 5 minutes, 25 minutes, 10 minutes. And that's designed about around kind of normal workday stuff, right? So you break down an 8-hour workday and you take a couple different breaks to kind of decompress and get up and move around, and you get back on task, right? But with most of the Pomodoro things, and I'm just using the Tomato Timer website here, but there's Pomodoro timers that you can go install for Windows. There's ones in the app stores on Linux. If you look in one of my earlier videos, I show you how to go write a really, really simple one as a shell script. And I think that's a great way to go do it. But what you can go do is you can shrink the amount of time down pretty significantly. And you could go for like maybe 10 minutes at a time, and then do, a 2-minute break or a 3-minute break, and then do another one for a 2-minute break. And then you just do like 4 of those, right? So if you do 10 minutes and then a 5-minute break, and then 10 minutes and a 5-minute break, and then 10 minutes and a 5-minute break, you can study for a good solid 40 minutes in an hour. And that's basically all you do for the day, right? So you do that, every night, as opposed to doing it in a large batch. And the really great thing about it is that's a great way to sort of retain stuff. So that's in terms of like you doing your reading on things. That's in terms of like maybe like watching videos on the stuff, or taking an exam, or sort of all the kind of stuff that goes into taking an exam, all that kind of prep stuff. And then when it comes to memorizing things, one of the things I wanted to sort of point out is Anki, or Anki, or however you go ahead and say that. So Anki decks are something that's been around for quite a while now. They're heavily used in med school, which is why if you do a search for these, a lot of times you'll see a whole bunch of like medical stool stuff, because they have to memorize things, right? So for us, because we need to go memorize things as well for our certifications, this is a really handy tool. So there's a bunch of these. I think Anki Web is probably the most commonly sort of well-known one. And what you can go ahead and do is you can go run the apps, and then you can go sort of sync it to this website, so it keeps track of what you know. And the nice thing about these is you can go ahead and get one that you put on your phone. You can get one that you have on your PC, your laptop, whatever it is. And because it's synced on the web, you can go study for 5-10 minutes when you're on the train commuting home, or when you're watching TV and you're in a commercial, you can hit the mute button, just do a little bit of studying. And the Anki deck thing is, it's a really simple idea. You get a bunch of sort of flashcards. You could even do this traditionally if you wanted to do it. You get a bunch of flashcards, and then basically you have 3 categories, right? So either it was easy, right? It was sort of normal or moderately difficult, or this is something I don't know yet. And basically the idea is you just go through the deck, and if you have one that's easy, you go put it back in. You see the same card again. It was easy the second time. You take it out, you put it on the pile, and then you go through basically taking each card and whittling it down until it's something that's easy, right? So you don't take the full like number of cards. You whittle it down to like 20, 25, and then you just go through each one. And by the time you get through all those 25 cards, you should know the material. And then the thing that's really interesting about the Anki deck programs is they automate some of this for you. So in the more traditional physical kind of version, you'd write down like when you took it and basically put them into different decks. And then what you would do is you'd wait a certain period of time that's based on how the brain works and how it puts things into long-term memory. So if you do this with the Anki deck programs, it'll do this for you. So based on how difficult a card was for you the last time that you went through it, it will show it to you at different intervals. So the harder things that you had problems with, you memorize, you see more and you memorize quicker. So that's it's a really interesting idea. So this is a Anki deck program that I'm on my Windows machine right now. So this is from the the Windows box. So like this is just going through some questions. So like, what does a dot stand for in directory terms? So you show the answer. Dot is the current directory, right? So this was easy. What does dot stand for in directory terms? You can go look at the short answer. It's the parent directory, so up one directory, right? So the idea is you can kind of go through these decks, and it's a really great little tool for memorizing stuff, right? So if you go combine Anki Deck with the Pomodoro timer, right, that's a pretty interesting combination where you can go ahead and do this for a set period of time each day. And you're going to be studying very efficiently because you're going to be studying the stuff that you don't know, or at least that's what the deck is going to sort of push you towards, right? So it's going to be giving you the most value for your study time. And you can go ahead and study effectively for a reasonable period of time. And then the last thing is if you're not familiar with kind of test taking strategy, just do a quick Google search and read through some of the guides that you'll find out there. A lot of universities put them out there. This one happens to be from St. Mary's College in California. I just did a quick search for this, and this is one of the ones that came up. Obviously, a lot of this is sort of written towards more, university-centric kind of exams where you could like ask your professor. But one of the things that they do is they say before you start the exam, look at the test, right? How many kind of things do you have to go through? So when you go through, do all the questions that are familiar, put off the ones that you don't know until the end. So you kind of crank through and you make sure that you get all the ones right that you can get right. So that way, if you run out of time, the ones that were more difficult, right, you didn't spend all of your time on. For multiple choice things, go through and sort of look at, each question, try to go rephrase stuff, try to go ahead and not only go pick the right answer, but like positively rule out the other answers. That way, that you didn't just sort of slip up on phrasing. A lot of these are really, really useful. And they're not massively difficult, but it's one of those things where I know that I went to public school, and I don't think that they ever talked about this when I was in high school or middle school or elementary school like this, or if it was, it just was something that I missed. But I know a lot of people who go to better schools. This is something that they talk about all the time because they start prepping people for some of the entrance exam things fairly early. So if you haven't been exposed to those, I'm not going to go over all the kind of things that are in the kind of test taking strategies kind of lists. But look at one or two of them and get an idea if they make sense for you, and if they do, awesome. Hopefully they'll help you. They'll a lot of it's just sort of common sense. Like if you're not a morning person, don't schedule an exam for 8 a.m. right? Take it in the early afternoon, or like if you know that you feel a little bit lethargic after lunch, don't schedule the exam after lunch, stuff like that. So just really kind of common sense stuff, but they add up, right? Like if you have a question that you have kind of difficulty with, and you're not sure about it, flag the question, move on, because we'll make this sort of Linux Essential sort of specific. Like, so if they say, aside from the man command, what is another command you could go use to, find out information about how a command works or something like that, or read documentation on a command. And you can't think of it, right? So, multiple choice, so it shouldn't be a problem, but like, we'll just assume that you need to like write it in. And then you flag that one to come back to. 10 questions later, there's another one that says like, what does the info-k command do? Well, it's going to do a keyword search of the info database of all of your info pages, right? So that's the command. So you can do things like that. Again, really sort of simple stuff, but it adds up. So for those of you guys who are thinking about taking certifications, whether that's something like the LPI or AWS exams or what have you, one of the things about working in tech is that certifications are a decent part of what we need to go do. Now, not maybe once you get in the later parts of your career, but I think for a lot of people, they are something that people follow up on. Like, so for me, I'm looking at doing the Google Cloud Architect exam fairly soon. That way I can get certified to go teach, GCP classes, right? And that's not something that everybody's job needs to go do. But if you're somebody who is like maybe a traditional Unix admin, and you've been in an environment where you haven't touched any cloud stuff, but you've got skills with automation and Ansible and things like that, well, taking a AWS cert or a Google Cloud cert or whatever it is can help bolster your resume and sort of show that you have credentials that kind of fit for things. Also, HR just sort of looks at this stuff all the time. So, I'm not going to make the argument whether you should get certifications or not. But for those of you guys who are interested in doing it, taking a test is a large part of that. So hopefully those are some tips that can be helpful in terms of, finding strategies and ways that you can go past those things successfully. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. We'll have another video for you soon. And yeah, click the like button if you enjoyed this. Subscribe if you would like to, see more of these. And in the next video or the one after that, I'll give some more information about how you can go ahead and sign up for that extremely discounted version of the LPI Linux Essentials course that I put together, which will be, with labs and instructor led. And so you get somebody to answer, questions and all that kind of stuff at a price that will probably not be very profitable for me. But I want to do that as sort of a thank you for you guys. So I'll probably be limited to like 12 seats maximum. I don't like to do very large classes for especially introductory stuff because I want to make sure that everybody can get personalized attention if they need it. And yeah, thanks again. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.